It's clear that COVID was different than a hurricane, losing employees, stuff like that. But it is similar in a way that you can learn from it, right? So every year, someone's going to put out a disaster plan for when a hurricane hits, right? Now, obviously, that hurricane lasts a little bit longer, but it is interesting to kind of look and reflect back at that and say, you probably know what to do. You're just not doing it. And as you were talking about kind of different departments on, you have your finance department, your development department, your and several other departments in a business, or as you're kind of putting together kind of your business plan, there isn't anything about the individual wellness of the the founders of the business or their staffs typically. And is that something that, and with business over the last decade, I think in Hampton Roads has really become a more popular thing where people are looking at it as different than maybe the decades before. I don't really know how to articulate it, but it seems like a lot more exciting about business in the last decade. Like,
Yeah.
are you seeing stuff around kind of businesses start to include themselves, their teammates, their founders in kind of the mission statements, the business plans of the world, or how are you seeing that kind of move forward? Because it's interesting. I think it's important, and I think it's something that a lot more businesses should put on there, because when they go through, the roller coaster ride, it might be a little bit easier if they can just, drop and do 20 push-ups through all of that.
Yeah, yeah, and what's interesting, Zach, is I'm sure regions across the country have done this, but in our region here in Hampton Roads, Eastern Virginia, there was an effort with several business organizations like our Hampton Roads Chamber, our Hampton Roads Workforce Alliance, that really came together and recognized that they needed to, really just kind of prop up their fellow business colleagues by simply understanding what was happening and to prepare for recovery, right? And as part of those discussions, exactly what you're saying about how do we start to realize that the health and wellness of our employees and of ourselves as business leaders has to be weaved into whatever we start to do moving forward. And I think what has been really fun with some of the recovery 757 resiliency plans and recovery plans is that the human resources departments and whoever is fulfilling the human resources roles within organizations of all sizes are starting to almost celebrate, I think, because what they have been trying to advocate is the high idea of health and wellness through health insurance or through maybe wellness plans that they've been and wellness programs that they've been trying to foster within their organizations probably for years, right? Because obviously healthy and well employees will lead to more productive employees and fewer days missed from work, or even for their children, if there's health and wellness promoted throughout the family, then there are going to be fewer days missed for school for kids that have to be out sick. So I think what the pandemic has done, because of how prolonged it has been and really shifting everything to remote and distance activities, has really focused on the critical importance of health and wellness through the business, and for businesses now to really be looking at how are we fostering health and wellness through the programs that were already in place, and what are the policies looking at. And as we've discovered through a lot of this, um, things like mental health and behavioral health coverage is something that people are looking at within their organizations, looking at how to address childcare, especially with a lot of the remote learning that occurred throughout the pandemic, and how many parents were really forced to stay at home so that they could not only work but also help their children foster effective and productive learning remotely, and also looking at how businesses can provide resources or connections to resources outside of the businesses has really started to come to the forefront. So I think what the leaders of businesses are finding is that they're really having to look at how human resources is not only just looking at hiring and managing the employees. They're really having to look at the benefits and healthcare coverage and supports and services that are being available for their employees. And for those in particular that were already involving employee assistant programs, or were already focused on health and wellness programs like advocating, breathing exercises, or fostering yoga, or allowing for some paid family leave time for childcare, or for other benefits. Again, I think a lot of this discussion is really starting to impact how businesses are going to be planning and moving forward. And as we're looking even at that whole discussion about employees, choosing where they're going to work next, with the effectiveness of remote access and remote learning and remote working, many employees now are looking at positions to see, could there be an option to be able to do remote learning or remote working, especially because virtual encounters and virtual platforms are allowing effective administrative roles to still be productive and to still be accountable, even if it's not within the same office space as some of the other coworkers, but rather having the remote workspace be at home in the office. So knowing that attrition and hiring are starting to be impacted by some of these other human focused factors, and looking at programs that might be supporting childcare in a different way, focusing on health and wellness a little bit more, focusing on mental health, coping, and having a safe environment to share some anxiety and stress. So again, I think this is really a time for businesses to evaluate where they are as far as some of those benefits or some of those processes and resources, and how they could leverage resources that are available, that are low cost and no cost to them, that are really accessible for their employees and for themselves, outside the organizations.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing that I hope that people would understand, or be more willing to acknowledge the fact that it's okay not to have all the answers. You don't need. No one expects you to know everything. You don't need to know everything. So when you're going through some uncertain times, you not knowing, it's okay, and you can show that vulnerability, and you can reach out to people that you talk to on a regular basis. I mean, Zach and I became very close because we would cry on each other's shoulders, figuratively, because starting a business is really, really tough. And so we would bounce, hey, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, and that's how we got through those things. I mean, like, how are we going to make payroll this time? What are we going to do when we have to let somebody go that we don't want to go? And I mean, those are all really difficult things that you have to go through, and it's okay not to have those answers. So I've been directly involved within our entrepreneurial community for years, and the most common question I get is, Tim, I want to get involved, but I don't know what events I should attend. Well, StartWheel eliminates that pain point, because we consolidate all the events you should attend into a single calendar. Now you'll be in the know and see where to spend your time. Gone is the need to search multiple websites and calendars. Just head to startwheel.org and see for yourself. That's startwheel.org.